Navigating the choppy waters of digital transformation can be challenging, but with the right kind of strategies and tools, enterprises can successfully reach their destination of growth through engaging customer journeys and improved workforce productivity. In this episode of Mint Think Tank presented by Salesforce, we will engage in a discussion with leaders from India's financial services industry on how they position their digital compass to the point to the true north of growth through uncharted waters of uncertainty. Joining us in the panel are Abhishek Chandra, CIO at IIFL Wealth, Saurabh Tiwari, CTO at Policy Bazaar, Sandeep Prabhani, COO at Yes Securities India, Abhijit Bhattacharjee, Senior Vice President at RBL Bank, Amit Genda, who's the CEO at Avance Financial Services, and Vikrant Chaudhary, Vice President for the FinServ and Enterprise Business at Salesforce India. Gentlemen, great to have you on board for understanding more about your digital transformation journey with an eye on consumer insights and workforce improvement. So let's start the discussion. Vikrant, I'll come to you first. Mark Benioff once said that every digital transformation is going to begin and end with the customer. So in these pandemic times, well, customers have become more open to branchless banking, online or mobile transactions, interacting with chatbots. So let's start this discussion with how can the financial services industry build more customer centricity, considering only 27% of customers surveyed by Salesforce describe the industry as being completely customer centric.
Thanks, Gautam. Thank you for the opportunity. As Mark already mentioned in the book, as well as what you see in the report, while if we look at it from a BFSI industry point of view, how did banking start? How did insurance start? How did financial services start? Most of the financial services as a services companies actually started with product at the center of it, at the heart of it. So over a period of year, we went to include population into financial inclusion, as we call it. When we did that, all of my fellow colleagues here, as well as basically bankers, insurers, NBFCs, etc., when they included people in financial system, it was centered around an offering of financial services, which is maybe a CASA account, a saving account, or a salary account, then maybe for credit card, then for loan, and for maybe a corporate relationships. So where we come from in financial services was always a product-centric world. And technology companies like us in those days used to focus on what we call a system of record, basically product-related transactions being stored in the right manner, available in the right manner, and so on. But with, in fact, you mentioned pandemic. Pandemic has been one of the largest digital transformation lever in last about 18 months or so. We are back into inside sales. We are back into virtual relationship rather than a physical relationship. And forces are actually making services to become product neutral at the heart of it, which means an interaction needed to be product neutral, whether it's a sales interaction or a service interaction or even an inquiry. Okay. And hence, the need at the center, which is the customer need, was always product neutral. It just we happen to come from the school of product centric thought processes. But today, as experience, what is needed for any consumer in that kind of a world, it needs a glass on the pane, a pane of glass where all products could converge, all interaction could be for product neutral. So the customer-centric need post-pandemic or even otherwise in current times, the CX or customer experience, or in fact, I should broaden the definition here into stakeholder experience, has taken the center stage, whether it's an employee experience or a consumer experience or even an agent experience like that. So from our point of view, we enable experience. We are a stakeholder experience company. And that's what we have been able to enable. And in fact, right now in post-pandemic situation, it's the time of being asset light and distribution heavy. So in a phygital world, we've been able to be physical asset light, but at the same time continue our motion of distribution of products, services, listening to consumers, providing to consumers what they need at an unprecedented pace. In fact, that's been the central contribution in this time. So transitioning our customers and partners from a product centric world and organizations, meaning they were organized that way. Today, newer designations are coming along, and I think we have in some form played an enabler role to be the customer service world.
All right, let's see how this transition from product-centric thinking to customer-centric thinking has panned out among various players in the ecosystem, in the BFSI ecosystem. You've laid out the broad contours. Let's get the specifics. Now, Sandeep, I'll come to you first. Now, in terms of managing customer relationships, what are the gaps that are yet to be overcome in the space of wealth broking and investment and merchant banking for players such as Yes Securities, considering the move in the broader industry from a transaction-led model to a relationship-based one? And of course, there's also shifting demographics to a more digitally native investor. So how have things panned out for you, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah, so what we've actually seen is that, the pandemic has actually accelerated the move towards the entire digitalization of the entire ecosystem that we have. You probably would have read about the huge growth in the number of accounts that have been opened by the retail investors, the very growth of Zerodha and all the other players in the market is testament to the fact that the retail investors have taken investing in a very, very big way. What's also been seen is that while the take-up of digitalization has been really quick and really fast, where a lot of people need to now focus also on is to ensure that the way in which you service all the customers and provide an omni-channel experience that you have with them is as the customer wants it. So alluding to what Vikrant was saying, that we were earlier, everybody was more of a product-led company. Today, it's more of a service-led company. So you really need to ensure that you interact with the customer in the way the customer wants you to interact with him. The expectations have really changed. The rise of big data, social media, the whole expectation that everybody wants that everything should be tailored according to my needs. The hyper-localization, as you can want to call it in that sense. Everybody expects that my situation is different. I am unique, and therefore I expect those guys to tailor their product requirement to me. And therefore, the whole thing that we had in the past, that it's a cookie cutter product, it's a take it or leave it, now really has to be customized to each person. You have multiple channels. You can't really afford to get siloed into the whole thing. You really have to ensure that everything converges into the base and the focus being the customer. You need to anticipate where the customer would want to go next and be ready to serve him when he wants to go there. And these are some of the areas that everyone is actually working on to try and fulfill, because the pace of transition by the customer has been far faster than probably many of us were prepared for.
When the pace is faster than your delivery, what are the gaps which open up then?
It's probably in terms of customer servicing. So those are the areas that you really need to ensure that you can actually service him from any channel, any way, anything that he has expressed a desire in the past or is a new want of his is something that you need to anticipate and be ready. You need to be ahead of the curve rather than being, very quick to react. You got to be proactive in that sense.
All right. I'm sure managing expectations, those great expectations which keep evolving, is going to be the next challenge for a lot of the industry leaders, because as you said, the pace of change keeps going faster than what the delivery involves. So let's see how some players manage that. Abhishek, the last time we spoke, we discussed product supporting features from IIFL Wealth, including video portfolio statements for your clients. You now also have IWA, which is the personal wealth WhatsApp assistant, added to the stable, along with many more initiatives. So I want to understand, what's your secret ingredient of success when it comes to, say, productization of these consumer insights? Because we've been talking about the broader industry moving from product thinking to customer thinking, but I also see that you have productized those consumer insights to make customers understand very clearly the value proposition, rather than feeling that something has improved but not exactly being able to qualify it. So how do you do it, and how do you see platforms such as Salesforce helping you in scaling those products?
So, to share with you, Gautam, I feel one of the most critical points for us has been to ensure that we keep a complete view of the client in place. And client 360 degree was becoming one of the most critical points for us. And that's where, in fact, to share, we use Salesforce as a platform for us. And that's where it helps us evolve the overall view from a continuity perspective. So there can be times where the RM would change, the relationship manager would change for a client. But when there's a smooth handover, client feels very comfortable that he was exactly conversing with relationship manager one to a particular point, where it got exited, how did the new person come in. Same way, even the point which Sandeep was sharing about on omni-channel experience or a continuity, we are able to demonstrate to or share with the client that what all had he chatted with us on our WhatsApp channel, and when he has moved to us in a direct personal call, we exactly are able to conversing, this is what you were chatting with us on our bot, we know this is where you are stuck, and how do I help you out further. So that continuity becomes very, very important to establish, where he knows that, okay, he's not getting left behind, he's not getting left out anyway.
Absolutely. And in these uncertain times, it's that continuity which helps you connect deeper with the customer. And of course, it has a sort of a rollover effect across improving workforce productivity and other aspects as well. We'll come to those aspects later in the discussion. For now, we'll understand more from other players as to what they're doing. We've seen the wealth management side explain their point of view. Let's come to the financing side. Amit, Avance is a new age education finance company providing NBFC with both a B2C component, which is individual student loans, and a B2B component, which is education institution financing. So could you give us some use cases where specific customer insights helped you tailor your offerings in a smarter and more effective manner? And I asked that question to also understand, what are the characteristics of a good and useful customer insight in your opinion, and how companies can craft testable insights to polish their customer experiences.
Well, I'm going to try and earn my coffee for the day. Let's see if I'm able to do justice to it. I think, let me begin by saying, I personally believe data is the new oil for the digital economy. Literally, it's like crude, right? Needs to be processed, broken down, and then from that, you got to bring out call to action, which are going to lead to profitable insights. Now, profitable insights in today's world with Gen Z, with millennials, cannot happen unless and until you are creating value for them. There is no way you will create stakeholder value and be able to bring in a robust customer proposition unless you're able to make it happen for the customer. So we all talk about customer centricity. Technology in the conventional approach used to be lending companies, non-banking finance companies would say, I need to book my loan, so I need a tech platform. That's history. The senior management team and I discussed this many times. If any management team has that view, then they are going to be dinosaurs. Technology is at the front today. Just to give you a background, we are owned by Warburg Pincus at 80% and 20% is IFC. We are an education-focused financing company. Like you mentioned, new age. All our customers, all our businesses are actually B2C. We do work B2B to B2C to the point you made earlier. So we work on both sides clearly. I think data has helped us significantly. Technology, hyper personalization has really, really helped us. It used to be a physical setup completely. We've been working last 3 years, brick by brick, quarter by quarter, in the financial services parlance, to turn into being a phygital setup and eventually a fully digital customer-centric setup, which is offering frictionless experience to our customers. So let me take one example. Our largest businesses are student lending business, where students average age would be 20, 25 years, let's say a median number of 23, 22, going Indian diaspora, going to the US for their masters, typical 20, 22 month program, could be from Indian students prefer to go to the US. So the targeted audience is generally US STEM, which is going to the United States for sciences, technology, engineering, and maths. And everybody is focusing on that market. I heard Sandeep if I'm not wrong, talk about earlier on how new trends are emerging, right? How data allows you to look at new trends. So let me give you one clear illustration there since you asked me for a few. Every lender was focusing only on STEM. What Avance did was Avance started focusing, offering STEM courses and also looking at STEAM. Now, what is the A in between, right? It is science, technology, art, engineering, and maths. It is the data that allowed us to pick up these trends and focus our business there. Happy to share with you that it has a direct bottom line impact. When market degrew by 10%, we actually grew by 15%. That too in a COVID year. Now, what are these kind of courses? How did we look at it? Just to give some texture there. Essentially, we picked up these trends, looking at data, looked at the supply side, we looked at the demand side. On the supply side, we typically looked at evaluation of student profile, academics, so on and so forth, their test results. So, what was their IELTS, SAT, so on and so forth. And more important, also looked at what is their college and course ranking where they're wanting to go in the US, history of employment trends there, what is the geopolitical situation there. We looked at all of that and we built into a very robust scorecard and designed customer-centric programs. Data also allowed us to see insights that we did not have before. I'll give you one example. Let's say somebody who was passing out from a tier 1 engineering college, IIT or a NIT, any respectable tier 1 college in India, or a tier 2, let's say a Motilal or a Manipal, and aspiring to be going for a US STEM program to any leading university, could be the University of Texas at Arlington, or could be University of Washington, or let's say the New York University. We actually mapped through government reported data and through employment reports that are available to say what is the kind of salary they're passing out with and what kind of employers are going there. We today have rich information to say employers in US, in IT, in health, in pharma, including we have Salesforce there. Of course, we have a lot of other names there. We have in financial services, we have American Express, we have JP Morgan Chase, we have Citi, and I can go on. I think data has allowed us to bring the customer to the front. Data has allowed us to also digitize the journey. We manage quasi digitization already, which is why I said we are phygital. If I fast forward the next couple of quarters, you will actually see us deliver a completely seamless experience.
It's a fantastic illustration of how you've used insights from all these mediums and translated into value-added services for customers. But since Amit brought up Salesforce, Vikrant, Salesforce has been doing a lot of work in the financing space. According to you, what are the nuances at play here and how are things changing? Because as we discussed earlier in the wealth management industry, the fact that a lot of the customers are going ahead of the curve, especially when it comes to technology and expectation. So it falls on providers to catch up with that. So how are things changing? And give us some examples from the Salesforce perspective.
In fact, it was very nice lecture given by Amit and Abhishek here on both wealth and education side. During pandemic, we enriched our ability to contribute to the new age edtech sector disproportionately, because edtech heavily invested in last 18 months to be relevant, to be a newer product offering and reach out to the segments that they had not done before. So combining the experience on the edtech side as well as the financing side, okay, there are three key trends that we've been able to service. Okay, one is the client 360, and both Abhishek and Amit spoke about it in their own unique examples of when Amit was talking about a student and the adding color about it. Okay, he is pass out of so-and-so college, this is the degree, this is where he's planning to go to, here is the subject, and this is the tier of college, likelihood of career he wants to pursue, etc. So this is like knowing the customer 360. Okay, so that's one piece of contribution which we've been able to disproportionately do well. On the wealth side, when Abhishek was speaking, a lot of time the 360 is not fully known, and to just nuance it, there is a difference when you watch something in a CD quality view and a DVD quality view and an HD quality view. So it's about the depth around the 360-degree know-how that we have been able to contribute. Second piece, which is the topic of data, and data getting contextual, being able to do hyper-personalized service for a segment of one. Old age technology used to service a segment of a type, okay, a class type, a socioeconomic type, and a product type, and so on and so forth, or a regional nuances. This is segment of one today. So in segment of one, basically tailoring the offering is about, if you know more, you can do more. Okay, so if so-and-so student is going to, has already been selected for a university like an NYU or a UC Berkeley, then Amit's company automatically knows what is the financing amount to be done, what is the age bracket, etc. And I think their credit decisioning time that he talked about is automatically credit decisioning based on the profile, and he spoke about minutes and not days of the past. So net, you are able to create a customized offering, which is customized to not a segment class, but a contextual segment of one, and be able to be intelligent, which means the 360 is known to the provider. And second, this data piece doesn't really end on the first transaction. It keeps enriching from there to on. I think it gives us an ability to create newer offerings by our customers. Okay, so in any segment, as they do more, they end up creating a new insight which was not available before, and perhaps branch out to newer offerings, newer revenue streams, etc. So three central trends: data, customer 360, and being able to do actionable closed loop of journeys, and not really stay on just an insight and stay there and take certain decisions, but close loop it in the complete holistic journey perspective.
Absolutely. And you've nicely encapsulated it in a tagline: if you know more, you can do more. So we have heard the journey from customer insight to customer success, from the financing side and from the wealth management side. Let's see what the banking side has to share. Abhijit, how has RBL Bank used the power of technology and consumer insights to grow its customer base from 1.5 lakh to 85 lakhs in just 10 years? Give us your story.
Yeah, so you said 1.5 lakh to 85 lakhs, but you need to see how it jumped every year. So every year our budget gets doubled. The numbers get doubled. So, next year, what the number I'm talking about, and being COVID on time. So look, I basically break this up into two parts. I think I don't want pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And the post-pandemic also I break it up into two parts. We all know post-pandemic, the digital adoptions and everything has gone hugely. There is a uptake across the industry, not only bank, but across the industry. But post-pandemic also, I break it up into two parts. One, the first part, which is 2020, is mainly on adoption. The new tools come into the place. People started adopting it. People started getting into a new digital tool, communication tool, new processes. The way we are doing the business, physical plus some digital, it has become completely digital. So there's a process change, there is an attitude change, there is a technology change, and all three need to happen in a shorter period of time. In 2020, from 2021 onwards, and I can't agree more what Amit has said, data is a new digital now. So the point is, you have done the adoption, the digital adoption is over now. Now, how you leverage it, and that makes the key, that makes the differentiator between all. And that performance improvement can come only through data. It cannot come without that. And internally, the way we are structured, we see our core and the core systems in a different way, and our peripheral systems in a completely different way. Our peripheral system have to be completely agile. Peripheral system have to be completely the omni-channel. The point Sandeep has said, and it have to be adaptive in a quicker response way. So we keep on saying on our internal meetings, we keep a chair on the room, and the customer is one of them. It's an old say, but we try to practice it on whenever we talk about all this. Look, as an organization, we don't think we are wrong. We always think we are right. sometimes we need to take a step back and see, okay, where our systems and processes can go wrong, and customer actually find that out and comes back to me. And if you can find that out, where I can go wrong, then you can probably service the customer better. Okay. Now, if you are talking about customer service, we're looking into the customer angle onto that way. It's a typical, if you're looking at technology mind, it's a typical AI ML problem. Okay, you need data, you need to do analysis, and need to come back. Was it used to happen earlier? On the earlier days, yes, it used to happen. The RMs used to know the person, know his families, know what's going on. Now, the point is that I need to get the data and to process the data and create the customer behavioral analysis. Okay. Now, the way we look into it, we try to find where the customer can see potential problems are and try to be proactive and get the stuff done. I can give you an example. Suppose you go to ATM and do a transaction and transaction failed. Okay. And at that point of time, if you are a customer, what do you feel? You feel helpless because you don't know what happened. My card gets stuck, my money doesn't come out. So at that point of time, if you get a call saying, okay, look, I saw your transaction got failed, but look, these are 3-4 things you can do. It's become a fantastic customer service from a failure point of view. So looking into that, and even what we have done in last few months, nearly a year, we have actually mapped our entire customer journeys happening in our channels. And those journeys, those data, we capture it and we try to find out where the potential failure points are and where the customer has actually failed. And we do a proactive messaging, reach out to the customer to actually go ahead and give them the service, what they need, or try to solve the problem there. So forget about the complaint reduction or so on and so forth, but it actually create a fantastic customer delight in order to say, customer saying, look, bank feels for me.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point you make. Assess where things go wrong. And I find that is actually going to be more relevant for the insurance industry as well, right? Because that's the point where how you redress a customer issue, which is going to make or break your relationship with the customer. So that's a great starting point which you have put out to us, Abhijit. But I'll come to Saurabh for that. Saurabh, how can the technology help this sector deliver more connected experiences for customers? From that point of view of problem solving, we'll come to that. But also when they see brands as singular entities rather than different departments playing specific roles. How can challenges of, say, omni-channel integration, including lack of unified data and cross-functional collaboration, be overcome with a unified CRM platform? And I want to approach this question first because of the aggregated nature of your business. So if you could give us insights on this, then we'll focus on the point of how do you address the customer interaction from a problem point of view.
Got it. So I think for us, and I've been hearing it's a very good conversation which was happening around customer centricity, data being a new oil. And I'm sure, the pandemic has only elevated these topics to the next level, where we have started discussing this so much in all the conversations that we do nowadays. For us, Policybazaar being a digital channel right from the day one, somehow we are going through a journey in a very different direction. We are now moving towards the physical side. And we have been digital right from the day. So we are now taking the physical approach. However, industry has been largely driven through a traditional means, because as Vikrant said in the beginning, if you look at insurance industry, which has been very product centric right from the beginning. And now as the customer demands and expectations are going north, people have realized and the companies have realized that they need to build the customer centricity in building the products as well. So what we feel the entire pandemic has only pushed the insurance industry to start thinking about areas where digitization is extremely important. How we can actually try to cut down on the physical level of involvement of a consumer to give them better customer experience. I give you a simple example. I think the day this entire pandemic happened, it was unimaginable that we will ever have issuance of a policy without having a physical medical. And what the industry has come back with a very creative offering for the customers who are actually not very sick. They can actually do a telemedical underwriting and then they can get the policy issued. So industry took a very customer centric approach in delivering a service to a consumer. And we have also seen approaches where inspections can be done on the video. And I do remember the times when people used to get the inspection done through a surveyor who used to visit to your place. So what's happening, what's changing, wherever there are gaps, they are being bridged. And I do see the omni-channel approach in a physical world, which is now going to be there. So far, I think it was from an insurance industry perspective, it was not very digital. It was digital, but not very digital. But now it is becoming physical. I do believe collecting the data and the footprint of the customer is going to be very, very essential. And in Policybazaar, what we saw in last 12 years, because we have been connecting with the customer over on the digital platform, we have been able to know which customer wants which kind of policy. We have been able to personalize the insurance experience for them. And I understand as the entire industry is revolving and changing, getting into a proper digital come physical mode, the customer footprint collection will become a lot easier. And as we start having a lot of data, I think customer will have a lot of right fit products, which is again a customer centric approach. It is going to bring win-win proposition for the consumers. One is that the insurance companies will have better customers because it will drive more transparency through a digital channel. At the same time, customer will also have a better connect with the insurance company to get the right products. So
do you see that necessitating the need for a more unified CRM platform as and when that happens?
Yes, it has to be, because the number of channels which are increasing for customer connections are increasing day by day. People are reaching out through multiple channels, multiple ways. And it is extremely important for us to identify customer as one rather than as customer coming from multiple channels. So omni-channel unified approach is going to be the necessity of future. And that will only help consumer, and it will also help the insurance companies.
All right. Vikrant, you have anything to add to that as we spoke about the challenges, especially when it comes to approaching the customer as one rather than, customer from many channels. And of course, the challenges which come with, say, cross-functional collaboration or the lack of unified data. Tell us more about the use cases where you have successfully worked with customers in delivering more value from a unified CRM platform.
So in fact, Saurabh touched upon a pretty nice chord there on saying, insurers coming from which world they are coming and what can data or a unified platform actually deliver of that know-how. We used to say that agency is the way for insurance. In the olden world, all of the life insurance got served through agency route. With recent deregularization on the general insurance side, loyalties got lower. But if one needed to do a guilt-free insurance business, as we call it, the experience between the two, provider and the consumer, needs to be thicker, which means the provider is serving what the customer is needing. And in simple form, it's about, for an end consumer, it's my life and my assets. That's life insurance and general insurance, my life and my assets, which need to be risk-free or insured. In that sense, I think omni-channel, or basically knowing what somebody is wanting to buy, is not a product centric, but basically covering the need he wants to cover. Either he's wanting to cover an asset or he's wanting to cover some aspect of it, which is health included. So health insurance as well as a life insurance piece of discussion. So if the product itself could be tailored to what is the need of the hour, and pandemic saw it like live. Such a rapid pace, group insurance policies got edited to include COVID-related treatment and so on and so forth. So if configure, price, quote, for example, you configure your kind of a policy that you want, what you want to cover, you are able to generate a quote, and you are able to consume that quote online. So I think you kind of created your own quote. That piece of an ability is an integrated CRM platform could deliver. It's like Mera Wala Tata Sky or Mera Wala Cream in my living room that, paint companies tell you that they sell you actually tools, but they give you an imagination of how your house will look like. So insurance is all about covering risks around your life and your assets. I think an integrated CRM should be able to create a liquid proposition of being able to create your own product and consume it as it is, rather than sold through a distribution channel or an agency channel. In purity, it will give a new dimension of newer products will come. It will give a rapid scaling of being able to edit your own products. And I think on the annuity side, insurance is also an annuity business, okay? And it's a pretty long-lasting kind of an annuity business. The contextualization will hugely increase. Like on general insurance side, while loyalties are going down, but aggregators are doing a phenomenal job to contextualize this. Maybe my premium is differential from somebody else's premium basis my health habits, basis my driving habits, and so on. I think it's becoming, in fact, insurance began as from Great Fire of London. Okay. And those days there was no other way but to put it into some kind of a mathematical formula, put a contract and, price it. Today, reality can be assessed near real time. Okay. Technology facilitates that. So I think the real transformation is being able to create the product that consumer is needing at that point in time and consume it from the distribution channel he wants.
Absolutely. It's all about making customers happy with their choice. And we've heard some great examples from many players in that BFSI ecosystem about how they've panned out their customers' journeys. But let's also focus on the workforce aspect of it. And Vikrant, I'll come to you again on the question of, we've heard all these great examples of say, great customer journeys. Let's look at workforce productivity. How do you pair your workforce's productivity with the right kind of technological solutions to obtain those actionable consumer insights, which can translate to meaningful customer experiences?
So in fact, I think I briefly touched upon a word called stakeholder experience. And when it comes to workforce, that's one very, very important stakeholder in all whenever we are doing business. Its employee as a stakeholder, customers as a stakeholder, and a partner as a stakeholder. And we at Salesforce basically truly believe that it's stakeholder economy that needs to go up on all the three legs of the stool to make it happen. And for that to be up, I think productivity dimension, if we change it to effectiveness, because we are suddenly into collaborative world. I saw Saurabh mentioning that maybe a video KYC is a norm. So here is a human on the other side, but on a digital channel. But it's a physical human being on the other side facilitating certain things. So things like that have become a norm. And from a workforce productivity perspective, which is a process which my workforce is doing to facilitate certain dimensions of outcome for customers or partners. In that sense, I think they need in our own company, we do this of all the consumption by an employee based on his role are certain degree of systems, okay, certain degree of processes. You either participate in a process, you participate in a content, or you actually get input output to a system. In that context, you're consuming multiple services throughout the day, okay, and that's going to be a reality. So it's like, and life has become work from anywhere. We ourselves disrupted and created a product called Salesforce Anywhere in this time. And that product is a kind of a testimony to say you need a one engagement platform for employees to consume anything they want from a system of transactions that they are supposed to consume during the day based on their role, and then provide the service that they are supposed to render to a customer or a partner. So two messages here. It's an work from anywhere world. And I think the productivity dimension is changing to effectiveness because there are blurring lines on, work time and time zones and, in global organizations. So I think you need a platform which could be a one engagement platform, and technology is paving the way for that from our perspective.
All right. What's buffet for the workforce is a la carte for the customers. I guess that's how you could sum it up. Let's get some case studies on how the leading players in the industry have been using technology to improve workforce productivity. Abhishek, let me come to you. What's been your experience in using technology to improve workforce productivity, since a lot of the customer interactions did become remote due to the pandemic? How do you ensure the same set of advisors create differentiality for customers? That's my question to you, because you operate in a niche which is very active. So how do you manage to stay ahead of the game?
So, being in wealth management, right, and I'll just put a quick explanation, right. I feel customers come to the bank with saying, okay, safe, keep my money safe, right. You go to the insurance, take care of my time when I'm in bad times. On wealth, when he's coming to a wealth manager like us, right, or he's going to an extended arm of any banking fraternity, what is his expectation? His expectation is help me grow my money, right. So that's a big trust on the trust which needs to be there between us and the customer. There's a big trust on the trust. So trust becomes a very, very critical part as a part of this. This used to be very differently managed in the previous time where our relationship managers were regularly meeting the customers, but it has all changed. And I feel both the relationship managers, our sales team, and even our customers took that big leap during this pandemic. Getting into video conferencing, discussing the whole portfolio, discussing the whole information remotely, right? Initially, there was some resistance, but they later realized it was far more efficient, both. So one is on the employee productivity side, which Vikrant was referring to, right? Everyone started recognizing I can actually attend to a lot more customers than what I could do earlier. On the customer, he realizes that the relationship is a lot more accessible to us. I can reach him a lot more. I can get access to a lot more information than having those earlier printed copies which used to come with me and sit and do a review. And then it also helped us a lot in a hyper personalization, right? We started actually wanting a customer coming to us and saying, okay, rather than a 60% equity and a 40% debt portfolio, I'm actually wanting a 63-37. And I can actually today, basis our platforms we have built, actually do a back testing of that particular asset allocation then and there over a conference call and be able to show it to the client on how it would span out to be over a period of next 5 years. So I feel that's where the trust has started playing a very important part. And next, to also share, the clients have also during this phase, because they got exposed to so many digital channels, they have started looking at information security in a very different way. Clients who were interacting with us on WhatsApp till yesterday, today do ask us saying, are you sure, are you using the right security channel and right security measures when you're sending us statements on WhatsApp? So someone who was completely okay with till yesterday does ask it. Or even when our employees do call clients on WhatsApp, you would say, no, better go ahead and do a Teams or a Zoom call. We know that's a lot more better and a better standard from an organization perspective than doing a WhatsApp call. So clients are becoming a lot more aware on the information security also.
All right. I think that's a great example on using technology to overcome any trust issues from a value perspective. I'm going to come back to a point which you had mentioned, Abhijit, which is about solving customer problems, which is how the definition of great customer interaction can be born, because how the company solves that problem defines the relationship. I'm going to look at it from the trust perspective since we're talking about it. How can the financial services industry overcome the trust deficit, which stems from unsatisfactory experiences and an unreliable redress of issues, especially for, say, low-income consumers, because sometimes they might just not know how to get that problem solved. So how do you correctly implement low-tech solutions which incorporate data security and privacy to reduce consumer burden and ensure proper implementation of services? We'll come to you first, Abhijit, for this question, and then we'll get Saurabh's viewpoint.
Yeah, fine. Thanks for this. It's a very important subject for us. And obviously, we are one of the most highly regulated industry of whoever we are seeing it over here. Though the data policies and things still haven't come to India, but we expect that to come over India. Okay, but look, Abhishek is absolutely right. Previously, 2 days back, the customer are not that security centric due to all the communications, whatever we and the industry is doing. People has become similar. But what happens, when the customer comes to us, even if through a low technology or a high-end guys, they leave a huge digital footprints to us, and these digital footprints are faceless. You can collate this digital complete status, the complete customer journeys, and I actually can plot and map and see from where the customer went. I can create an omni-channel layer on top of it. See in the website what are the places he linked, on my app where are the places he went, on my call where are the places he went, and you can actually derive data out of it, and which you can use in two perspective. One is to do a servicing, proactive as much as possible. It is very easy to say I'm going to do a proactive servicing, but it generally doesn't happen. Some cases you do, but some cases you fall on that. Second, also it helps us to create our policy statement, our finding out which customer may be good for a cross sell, which customer is good for selling another separate service, may not be a cross sell, but a separate service. So capturing the digital footprint of the customer throughout our journeys is the key in order to get the customer servicing as a part of it. I'm going to give another example, which may not be exactly related to that, but when Vikram was talking about, it came into my mind, and this is one we have started using recently. Is we have created a platform play with the help of Salesforce, which basically creating all our digital acquisition through our asset side on which we are doing. So initially, it is just like recreating our existing stuff to the Salesforce. But once we start working on it, we understood it is the customer journeys we need to capture it through, and obviously, basis that we're going to roll it out. But interestingly, when we first roll it out, after a month or so, we suddenly realized, okay, this actually I can use it for my employee efficiency increasing. So I actually can started looking into which data is residing on which bucket, which employees bucket for how much of time. And that gives me a completely new insight of which of my internal organization is working so efficiently and which other one is not so efficient. So it's not a pointing finger, but it is try to find out, look, there is my bottlenecks are, and I can actually change these bottlenecks to move my processing faster and actually end up to a customer delight. End of the day, it's all a customer delight, correct? So suppose if I have to give you a loan in 2 days or I'm giving you a loan in 2 hours, that changes the complexion completely. And this insight comes when you started, capturing the customer journeys as well as the user journeys into these various digital footprints.
All right, let's hear the insurance sector viewpoint on this question. Saurabh, I asked the question on overcoming the trust deficit, and we were talking about how at the point where customer faces the problem, that's when the company and how it addresses that problem, that defines that interaction. So to the question of how to overcome the trust deficit, what could you tell us from the insurance industry perspective?
I think insurance is a very involved topic. In fact, you're buying a product in the case of life when you will be using it when you won't be around. You would be leaving it to your nominees to basically avail the benefit. And a lot of times what we have seen, customers are very comfortable discussing these propositions with someone physically. And that's the reason, as Vikrant was telling, traditionally the agent and agency models have grown around it. So it was the biggest challenge for us to grow it digitally. And we have been around advising customers over phone in order to basically make them purchase. We have been successful. We have somehow managed to break the entire thing through telephony. But what we have also realized, one of the best ways to build the trust with the customer is also through video calls or building some kind of a personalization of our advisor who is getting in touch with the customer. So we are trying to work in those areas where we can win trust of our customer either through physical channel, or if at all we are going digital, we should be able to bring some kind of personification of our advisor who is getting in touch with the customer through video or some profiling, etc. So these are various ways. But having said, that's not enough. Still, there are avenues where people seek ways to basically create some kind of fraudulent transaction in the name of a brand. It happens, and side by side we are trying to build awareness as well. So consumer awareness is another area which we have to handle through marketing and publicity events, where we tell the customer that be aware of these frauds and all these activities while we strengthen our entire technology infrastructure.
Absolutely. It's somewhere there is a network effect of positive outcomes when you try to solve problems for customers, when you try to be more involved in terms of actually solving your customer problems, as we've heard both from Abhijit and Saurabh, where, you can, when you try to solve one problem, you might find the solution to another problem as well. But as we've heard from a lot of the players, that all of them are also looking at servicing their customers in a faster way. And that also brings up the question of how do you remain agile? So Amit, let me come to you. How do BFSI players remain agile in a world where disruptions have become long-term in nature? Avance, for instance, introduced enhanced educational financial solutions, an innovative product feature which allows for students to opt for any type of instruction delivery module, whether it's hybrid or in-person sessions. So students could start their courses online and then smoothly transition to in-person sessions as and when the travel restrictions were suspended. So what's your plan to remain agile as more disruptions present more opportunities?
See, I have a simple principle. Every time there is adversity, it's an opportunity. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Last year, wave 1 COVID, no one had a clue what is going to happen, right? We just go back. Let's rewind in memory and go back to post 22nd March where we were. We didn't know the medical side of the crisis. We didn't know the depth. We had some news coming from China and some from US. Universities were shutting down. Travel was getting restricted. Name it. There was only one word prevailing: confusion. How do you do an education loan? Somebody goes through the conventional lending process. There is a parent involved. There is a child involved. The child could be 18 or 19, or if going for masters, like I was saying earlier, could be early 20s. Then came the new mantra called hybrid loans or online loans, right? So we picked some of these trends that I was talking about earlier. We worked with the ecosystem. Vikrant was speaking about working with stakeholders, for stakeholders earlier. Let me take the same illustration here, Gautam, and extend that thread. We actually work with the ecosystem of counselors, universities, India and global, and we said, what is that we can do to enable education? Because the worst thing that can be, you are locked inside your home, you can't step out, naturally following safety protocols, and you miss the year. Now, a lot of people said, hey, I will take a gap year. That was one route. What was the second route, right? What is the second option available? Conventional banking wisdom, and I'm not saying it's bad, okay? I'm just being factual about it. The conventional, at least the PSU banking system's view was, we'll wait. So we said here, there is an opportunity for us. We did a digital gateway for our channel partners. So the customer would send the papers to the channel would put in the application to Avance digitally in our student lending business overseas. We would decision the loan as we would have done otherwise, and we started offering hybrid loans. Let me I've given you what we did on the input side. Let me share an output here, what it did for us. It led to new applications going up by 30-35% in a COVID year where our offices were shut down. I can tell you, as part of my enterprise risk framework and BCP, I was ordering sanitizers on 16th March and I was being laughed at. CFO came to me and said, people are laughing, you are ordering masks and sanitizers. We Indians are very resilient. Okay, I said, okay, absolutely no issue. 22nd, 23rd, if I'm not wrong, March 2020, the Janta curfew came whatever. We all went into this extreme lockdown. If we had not adapted to some of these digital practices with the extreme lockdown, with our offices being shut all the way till Diwali, so November 2020 is when we literally started opening up the physical branches. It would have been a tough year, very tough year. Revenues were muted, customer sentiment was low. It is adoption to this technology, focusing on the customer, which allowed us to create a win-win proposition. So a safe environment for employees while being able to provide customer assurance and channel assurance. What we did was we started offering these hybrid loans. And happy to share with you, we grew by about 10-15% on the asset side, which is not bad for a year like 2020-2021 financial year. I think sum and substance, I believe that there is a large opportunity if you are thinking customer. These customers today, see who's our customer. Let me also talk about that for a moment. Millennials, Gen Z, okay, they are digital natives. You cannot influence them in any way except where your content is meaningful. Smart marketing is a thing of past, if you honestly ask me.
It's more transactional. They realize the value that you're offering.
Absolutely. The attention span is very, very limited. It is real-time messaging. We realize, I'll give you very simple illustrations. We were sending emails and SMSs. Now, Gautam, when a student travels, the mobile is on only for a limited period, right? They will go and take a new SIM card, naturally, right? They may also sometimes change emails. So, what works is WhatsApp. Instant, we all live, to be fair, not only millennials and Gen Z, we all live in the world of instant gratification. So channels have changed. Omni-channel used to be a great thing to do. Omni-channel has become necessity for existence today, if you ask me. Our WhatsApp service adoption is as high as high 90s. high 90s. And it allows now us to do a lot more for our consumers, if you ask me.
Absolutely. You're getting more data, so it gives you more options to come up with innovative products, as you mentioned. And I think that was a great illustration also of business resilience through foresight enabled by technology. I think that's a great point that you mentioned. And of course, from your instance, action is louder than words. As you came up with the right plan that, what, this could be a problem later on, so let's prepare for it beforehand.
Absolutely. See, our investments in technology and data, I'll give you a data point. The company went into inception in 2013. The new management came in around 2017. If I'm not wrong, we had done close to 12,000 loans till then. Live loans, customers. Last 3 years, despite last 18 months plus now, almost 18 months, right? 15, let's be specific, 15 odd months of COVID, we would have done about 150,000 customers. Now that's the power of data. That's the power of investing in technology and risk.
All right.
And when I say risk, it's machine learning and analytics, AI and ML.
All right. So let's talk more about harnessing the power of this data using, say, a different approach. And here I want to bring in Vikrant. Vikrant, do you think, since we're talking about agility, is low code app development, which is based on the use of pre-built components and easy to use tools, now going to be the norm for companies who are looking to create great digital experiences for employees and customers, but they don't have time on their side?
So very, very relevant. In fact, Abhijit some time back was talking the kind of insights he got by looking at the workflow of whose bucket is what. And I'm sure in a matter of days, he created an artifact to action on it for that necessary department. So I think low code in its depth is almost like a movement. I mean, in our days of coding, we used to do real coding on COBOL, on C++, and used to. So the programming and testing and all those concepts were very, very different. Today, at the speed of agility that we are talking about, and Amit just mentioned an example which was like a 12x of scale in a matter of few months, right? I think our co-founder was quoting some weeks back that just because you know how to code does not mean you should code. And it's an age of clicks and not of code. And you see kids these days assembling their own very nice tool very, very fast. So I think for enterprises like an AI ML dimension, data as a dimension, low code is almost like a movement of being able to assemble Lego blocks that you want in a very, very fast time frame for the outcome that you want. So it's a matter of hours and days, and age of doing SOWs for quarters is over. And in that sense, we ourselves were a testimony. In last 3 quarters, we have churned out product out of the same platform. When it was a wave 1 completion and some of the reopening was being talked about, we came up with work.com packaging, helping companies to reopen. How do you reopen? How do you do slot management, scheduling, and the same piece of facility and safety together? Right now, after the second wave, it was a time for us to work with healthcare providers, and we did Vaccine Cloud for the entire vaccine management piece with all the stakeholders of customer side, the provider side, and the administration side where vaccine is being, administered. And in current times, we have come up with something called a Salesforce Anywhere. So we are ourselves look at it. The olden age PID cycles, product development cycles, used to be like 18 to 24 months. We're talking that many weeks at this point in time, and churning out of a fairly same large platform, but productizing for relevance and productizing for the need of the hour. I think low code in that sense is facilitating all this, and it is only going to increase by the day.
All right. We're almost out of time. So before I come to all of you for your summary statement, let me just ask one question to Sandeep. As Vikrant mentioned, we are moving from the age of code to age of clicks. Yes Bank is doing more automation for its high end, for its end-to-end digital customer journey. Could you share with us what Yes Securities is doing to improve customer interaction by tuning out the noise and using a more agile technological framework to achieve that objective?
Yeah, what we are also really trying to do is basically a combination of products and features. So, at the end of the day, one of the things that I really believe in is what the customer really wants is the ability to decide for himself what is his need at that particular type of hour. So I can't really, as I've always said, can't really give a cookie cutter approach saying this is one product. It's a take it or leave it. You can only decide on the quantum or the size of the investment that you wish to make. But there are many other nuances associated with it. Therefore, you take a lot of products, you ensure that you code it in a manner that it can be tweaked for different sets of customers. So you can have baskets. You can have baskets where, this is in terms of the securities that we do. You can have baskets in terms of where SIPs are available, or you can have lump sums that are available. You can have a combination of equity and debt that you could actually put into the whole thing. The government has recently, I think it was just in the papers yesterday or today, that retail debt is something that's going to be also looking at. So it's going to be an exciting time where we are trying to look at, what the technology that is evolving, the regulation that is evolving to ensure that the ability for us to provide a product or a set of features where the benefits can be actually seen by the customers and his needs can be taken up in that manner. Today, I think Abhijit or Abhishek had mentioned that, or it was Amit, I'm not sure, sorry for that, that the pandemic has actually become more of a disruptor, but it's an accelerant for disruption. And it is at this particular point of time, crisis is usually, adversity is the best teacher. So a lot of myths that you can't do this, you can't do that in financial services, say in, broking or in wealth management, the office, the physical meeting, the PPTs, the paper was the norm. Nobody really imagined that you could do anything other than that, but you were forced to. And more importantly, the customers also adapted and accepted those changes. So the pandemic has actually shaken us out of our, you could say, comfort zone. It has forced all of us to think what we were doing were probably not good enough. And using that, we may not have been able to grow as quickly as we can. But in a way, this disruption has forced us to think, recalibrate, and figure out how can we innovate faster? How can we make it easier for the client to choose what he wants to, when he wants to, how he wants to, irrespective of the channel, in a manner that is comfortable to him. And that is a challenge that we have to live up to.
Fantastic. In fact, we can segue from there to see what happens now in the form of a summary, as incorporating the points that we have discussed and then distilling it to see where we head next. So my final question to all of you would be, in short, what happens now in terms of customer interaction initiatives using technological solutions after the pandemic eases? Because we all agree that the pandemic did cause a change in thinking when it came to customer insights and customer service. The question is, when things go back to the way they were, what do we do then? Abhishek, we'll start with you. Your quick summary statement on this question.
Sure. I feel the biggest point is going to be for us as a business is to focus on retention. I feel there is a lot of distraction, a lot of noise for the customer. Throughout the life cycle, we need to ensure that we continue to serve the customer with full attention, which means actionable insights and actionable nudges, which we can bring both to our internal employees as well as to the customers so that they can action upon it and take right actions as the market grows.
All right, Abhijit?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the point what Vikram has started the discussion, moving the corporate culture from the product centric to the customer centric. So if you start designing your processes, system, works towards a customer centricity or a customer view, rather than doing a product view.
Hmm.
That's what will hold the key. So we don't think product services are different. It have to be a same bundle. Similar the omni-channel, you're talking about the technology perspective, we have to think omni-channel in the customer journey perspective. So that's how it should be.
All right. Sandeep?
I think Amit had mentioned that data is the new oil, but it needs to be refined and processed. So for us also, how the customer uses my services, what does he do, what decisions he takes, why he takes, and can I map this customer and find out how many similar customers I have so that I can understand how the others also may behave, is going to be the way in which we are going to basically be targeting our clients and future growth.
Amit, if you could give us your summary statement on this question.
Let me say a quote here. Okay, I am of the view we are here to build a legacy. We are literally, we say this every day, we are wanting to democratize education lending in the country. Let's say what happened in housing a few years ago, maybe more than a decade ago in that sense, or what happened in MSME maybe around 10 years ago. My own view is that without big data analytics, companies are blind and deaf, wandering out onto the web like deer on a freeway. It's actually a quote by Jeffrey Moore. And I keep telling the team that data technology is giving us very, very clear direction. If you have to think customer, you have to think sustained proposition, and it cannot be price. It cannot be price. It is not sustainable. The only way it is sustainable is think customer, enhance the customer proposition, innovate, leveraging data, technology, and grow.
All right. Proposition over price. That's what the thinking is. Saurabh, your summary statement?
I think the new normal is going to be established soon. That's my wish. And I think that's going to be the reality. I do believe the physical world will continue to flourish, and omni-channel approaches would take the precedence over anything else. That's what I foresee.
All right. All right. Vikrant, let's come to you. Bring it all together in as we wrap up this conversation, your view on the way forward as things go back to normal.
I think as things go back to normal, it will not be the normal of the past. It will be the new normal as number one. We will be a collective learned lot, and learned meaning learning changes behavior. Okay. Understanding does little, but learning changes behavior. So we will change for the new normal, and we have seen it, shown it by ourselves. The last part is technology players like us will have much, much larger responsibility, because everybody had a central theme around technology players like us. So we will need to become almost like a pervasive, like humans as the biggest machine, right? A human being is the most intelligent system that you could find. And therefore, we will need to become, in a human-centric design, a constantly evolving, intelligent nervous system for companies. So there will be no business which will be without a technology layer, handle experience, handle disruption, handle agility, these topics, and irrespective of the products and offerings they serve, sell, or consume, the responsibility on us in the new normal will be to become that intelligent nervous system platform which pervades all stakeholders.
Absolutely. As human intelligence and machine intelligence converge, an entirely new normal is about to come out. So let's see where things go. But on that note, it's time to wrap up our conversation around understanding, engaging, and delivering the innovation charter for India's BFSI industry as part of the Mint think tank presented by Salesforce. I'd like to thank all of our guests in the panel for joining in and sharing their thoughts on the topic. And of course, also thank you to our viewers for tuning in. This is Gautam Srinivasan signing off. I hope all of you have a great day.